Okay, so we're back here for the second video in the two-video series on the Nikon FM, and I'm reaching across the frame, I apologize for that, to grab my Nikon FG. And here I have an E-series lens. This is the 36 to 72 millimeter zoom. It's a really amazing zoom, and one of my acquaintances reverse mounted this on a camera and used it as a macro, and it took some of the most amazing macro shots I've ever seen. It was a worthwhile experiment. I never would have pegged this as being a good macro lens. Anyway, so you can see here it's got the automatic indexing tab, and that's going to connect to this pin in the down position. So I'm just going to put this on. And that AIS lens is mounted. There we go. And then to unmount the lens, just do the opposite. It's pretty simple. Oh, jeez. That was the Nikon FG bumping that thing across the frame as the zoom lens extended in my hand unexpectedly. Now here we have an NAI lens, and you can tell it's NAI because it has the pin here, the pin connection bracket. Let's move that to where it can actually be seen. Okay. Now lenses that are converted from NAI to AI still have this pin, but the pin has nostrils in it, which this one doesn't. It's never been converted, and it has the AIS interface down here, which this one does. And this is a very, very old NAI lens, and dusty. That's disgusting. So to mount this NAI lens on the FM, I'm going to put the pin up. Now I can use this lens. To take a picture with this lens, I've got to set the aperture, stop down, check the reading, adjust the shutter speed, release the stop down, and take the picture. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know this about this camera. When the lever is shut, the shutter is locked. When it's open, the shutter is unlocked. Interesting. That would have been good to know before I filmed the last video. Going to put this back on my F3 for safekeeping. Okay, so that's how you mount and unmount the two different types of lenses that this is really designed to take. You can put an AFS lens on because those have the AIS pin. But really this was designed when these types of lenses, the AIS and the NAI lenses, were available. This predates the AFS and G. So it really is not really designed for those, although there's some backwards compatibility with Nikon. To load the film, I'm going to flick this backwards a little bit, put some backwards pressure on the lock, lift, and the door pops open, and that reveals the film door. There we go. That's a little bit of a better position. So I'm going to take my demo film that we use for all of these, extend the leader over here, pull the shutter arm back, actuate the shutter. There we go. Now, under normal conditions, what we would do is we would close this. But what we're going to do is take a look at how some of this fits together. Now, the first thing, as we talked about in the video, this is a unique feature to this camera. Here's that bearing that I talked about. And you can see what this is doing is helping to keep the film properly lined up in its track. Oops. So that film's going exactly where it needs to go across this focal plane. Now, if that weren't there, this cartridge could, if it slides down a little bit, as you can see, there's a little bit of give in the way that the cartridges sit in these cameras, and all SLRs, it's not just this one. As this cartridge moved around, it could cause the film to go into a different alignment, come out of alignment, so on and so forth. All kinds of things that could cause the image quality to be lost a little bit. So that's how you would load the film. Then you shoot all of your exposures, and it gets taken up in the take-up spool here. When you go to rewind it, you push the rewind button on the bottom over here, and the film rewinds. Now I'm actually going to take a couple more of these up here. So to take a double exposure, take the picture, hold the double exposure button. Oh, there we go. It slide it that way. Advance, and as you can see, as I advanced, the film didn't advance. Take your second exposure, release the shutter, now advance it. Put the lens cap back on, because this did not necessarily advance a full frame. So you put the lens cap back on, take a dead frame, and advance it, and now you've got your double exposed frame. You could do the same thing with more than one exposure. Shutter, advance, shutter, exposure button, advance, shutter, exposure button, advance. So if you wanted to take 3 or 5 or 20 or a gajillion exposures on the same frame, you could. And then the same process applies. You take your last picture, advance, put the lens cap on, take a dead frame, advance through it, and then continue. And that's the double exposure procedure. Then once you've taken your entire roll of film, oops. Now, with the back closed, that actually doesn't happen. The camera wants to have a staring contest with you. Alright, so that's what the meter looks like inside the viewfinder. And basically it's got some LEDs. I don't think I have a battery in this. Let me check. Oh, I do. Okay, so right now it's telling me that I am way overexposed. So since I've got an NAI lens, I'm going to stop down. Now I'm way underexposed. So that's how the stop-down metering works. If I am at... Here we go. Okay. So if I'm at f1.4 and I go to stop-down metering, nothing happens because that's this lens wide open. So I'm going to hold down the stop-down metering button. You can see incrementally that the viewfinder is getting darker each time. There we go. You can see a little bit clearer there, because what's happening as I go back and forth here at f16 is that my K7's sensor isn't adapting to the changing light levels as it was. So there's f16 stop down. Here we go, opening back up to f1.4. So you can see at this shutter speed, that's overexposed. So I had it. That's properly exposed, underexposed. And when it has both lights, it's not super underexposed, maybe a portion of a stop. That's too little light, way too much light. That's how the meter works. And the rest of the viewfinder is wide open. Now let's take a look. You can see through the viewfinder here. You can see that there is a split ring in the center. And that's your focusing split ring. It's 3 millimeters across. And then you can see a larger outside ring. Oops, sorry about that. You can see a larger outside ring. That outside ring is 12 millimeters, and that's the 60% center-weighted meter. So 60% of the metering is happening in that larger outside ring. Around the split ring is a bit of Fresnel glass, of ground glass, to facilitate the metering, because the downside to the split ring is that you need to have straight lines in order to really get a good focus, but the glass around the split ring will help you get a good focus even if you don't have straight lines. Alright, so now you saw that I had batteries in there, which I had forgotten that I did, but I was using this a few weeks ago. so it makes sense that I would have batteries in there. This is how you change the batteries. You need a coin. I use the same quarter in all my videos, and a quarter works fine. I think a nickel's too small, but a quarter is really about perfect. If you're outside of the country, outside of the US, then get a US quarter. It takes two LR44 batteries. These used to be called A76s, and they fit in. There's two sides. There's this flat side with nothing on it, and then which has a ring around it. That's the negative. And then there's the shiny surface that has the words LR44 plus, button cell plus being for positive, and then the manufacturer name on it. Now, when you put these in, you want to try to clean off the surfaces, because it will help the batteries last longer. And you want to put them in so that with the lens cap sitting downward on a surface and the little clips here, that you're putting them in so that the positive is facing upward. Now we're going to put these back in the camera. I'm going to hold this up to my eyes, and the LED is on, telling me I'm way underexposed, and that is letting me know that the batteries are in correctly. The flash Hotshoe up here syncs at 1/125th of a second, as we said in the previous video. What that means is that 1/125th of a second is the fastest speed, pardon me, at which the flash will sync properly. And the reason that it's that way, dang it, so 1/125th is the fastest speed that the flash will sync properly. And what that means is it's the fastest speed at which the entire frame is exposed to light. So let's say that this represents my shutter leaves, okay? And they travel vertically like this. Well, one's going to move up to open. This is 1/125th of a second, and then more come up from the bottom to block the image. Now let's say that you're taking 1/250th of a second. It might go something like this. Or if you're 1/500th or 1/1000th, something like that. If you're let's say 1 second, 1 Mississippi. So 1/125th and slower, you can use the flash because the entire film area is open to the light at the same time for a fraction of a second, at which point the flash goes off. It's for a fraction of a second for 1/125th. And then for a 60th and a 30th and a 15th and so on, the entire film plane is still open to light just for longer periods, and so the flash goes off at some point, and then enough light hits the film plane to let the flash work. If you're using a shutter speed faster than 1/125th, so 250th, 500th, or 1000th, what will happen is part of the image will be blackened out because the flash will only be visible in part of your image. Looked at stop-down metering, motor drive switch, finger guard. Oh yeah, finger guard is also shutter lock. Oh yeah, we talked about that. Oh yes, there was one other thing. In the first video, I mentioned that. So there's one last thing to talk about in this video before we wrap, and that is I mentioned in the first video that I don't have a rotating shutter guard, and then realized that this is my shutter lock, this is my shutter unlock, but it doesn't rotate. I found in my notes here that Nikon FMs made from 1979 until the end of production, which was 1982, have this configuration. There's no rotating shutter, and this is the shutter lock and unlock. That means that if you have a Nikon FM with a rotating shutter guard, it was made in 77 or 78, and maybe at some point in 79, I don't know exactly when the transition took place. If yours is configured like this, then it was a latter FM from 79, 80, 81, or 82. And that's the last thing that I had for you on the Nikon FM. So if this video was helpful to you, if informative or useful or anything, give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm putting out videos that are of high quality and useful to you. You can also subscribe to my channel right down there, and you'll be notified when future videos come out about photography or other subjects. Also, you can leave me a comment about anything and I'll respond. I'm pretty good about responding to comments fairly quickly. Questions, additional information, that's fine. If you have anything you'd like to see a video made about, if I have the equipment and the technical knowledge, I absolutely will make that video for you. And the last thing that I want to say before getting out of here, stay tuned real quick after this video wraps, by the way, and I'll have some photos that I've taken with this camera. And thank you for watching.